Hey guys, it's Flight Level Kai here. I know it's been a while since my last video. I think it was 8 months. Now I've been meaning to get this video out from like two 2 months ago, 3 months ago, but life's been pretty busy as we all know it. But here I am recording this video here today. So obviously today it is not the typical cockpit setup that we have with the Grand Caravan. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. I was pretty busy the last few months, as you can clearly see, because this is not the caravan. So let's go. Before I get into it, um, this is an Embraer 145. I got type rated recently. I'll share a story on that here in a bit. But right now we're leaving Marsh Harbor, Abaco, to go back to Nassau, Bahamas. So it's an airline. So let's get into it. So what happened was around August 2024, I received a message about an opportunity to work with this company. I'm not going to say the company's name right now, but I may reveal it in the future. Who knows? So I see the message about joining the company. I was very excited, and I wasted no time saying yes. I was excited because I was like, I'm going to get type rated on a jet. This is exciting, And typically, um, with FAA rules, since we're under ICAO, you can get type rated at like $500 or even less. So I was very excited to be type rated at about, I think I had about 660 hours. So, compared to some of my friends who are in the US, some of them are still flight instructors and building time to get 1,500 hours so they can fly jets. So, but however, it was a long process before I actually got to this point. And let me tell you, it was a good journey. So September 7th was actually my last day flying the caravan for the charter company I worked for. I remember that day was a Sunday, and we had a charter to Stanley Key. And Stanley Key is like a 20-minute flight from Nassau. But let's backtrack. Let's focus on the flight right now. So departing runway 27. I'm flying. I'm the pilot flying. So this is my leg, as you can see. I don't remember the actual takeoff numbers for this, but it's not that important. I'm sure it was like V1 might have been 120, VR is 121 or something like that. Yeah, but yeah, this runway is like 6,100 feet, and we took about, I want to say 5,000 feet of runway to take off, a little bit under 4. Yeah, no, back to the story. So that's September 7th. That was a Sunday, and we did a charter to Stanley Key. And I remember sitting there because it was one of the charters where we went there in the morning, and we sat there the whole day until the passengers were done with their day. So during the day, I received the email about in-dock classes. And for those who don't know, in-dock classes are, every airline has them. It's basically the classes you go to before you get type rated. Some do it after you get type rated, but I did it before. And so I actually didn't know that this was going to be my last day until I received the email, and the company was like, "Hey, you're gonna have in-dock, and it's gonna be for this amount of time." And I was like, "Okay, I have to leave this job today." And I felt kind of bad because I wanted to give in 2 weeks, so I thought I would have had more time to actually do that, but I didn't get that opportunity. So I remembered I told the company on that Sunday, and I'm like, "Hey, this is my last day working with you guys. Thank you for the opportunity." And they were nice about it, but I know they did not like receiving it that day of, especially while I was still on the job for them. So with in-dock, it prepares you to work for the airline. It's essentially like a long debrief about like the standard operating procedures, the SOPs, company policy, other training and certifications such as like ditching, CPR certification, fire training, and you also got the opportunity to meet your future coworkers, which is pretty cool. After the 3 weeks of in-dock, it was about a week and a half to 2 weeks until it was time to go off the training. And the training was scheduled at CAE in Dallas, Texas. During these 2 weeks, I was stressed. I'm not gonna lie, I was so stressed. I didn't know what to expect. I remember going on Reddit and like typing up any question I could and just saying like, hey, how would I, what to expect in training, what to expect, how to prepare for training. Because in my head, I'm like, it's 3 weeks of training. How am I going to learn how to fly this airplane in 3 weeks? You know, because it's a lot. And so, you know, many people were like, oh yeah, CAE prepares you very well. You know, you'll be fine, all sorts of things. And I'm like, okay, so they say. So with CAE, you know, they gave us login information. They have an app. What I did, because I was so nervous, whenever I get nervous about something new, I try to prepare as much as possible. So I basically I started going through the manuals, the airplane operating manuals. I started going through the company SOPs. I started going through the SOPs that Embraer set for this airplane, which the company one and the Embraer one is basically the same thing. So I just went through those things. I went through the memory items, tried to learn them, tried to understand what I'm going to be dealing with. I watched a lot of videos online about flying the Embraer 155, and it just made me more excited. So I was during this like week and a half, I was actually studying, preparing, because I didn't know what to expect. So what else someone say? You know, the only frame of reference I had about training was flight school. So I just remember how long it took me to get my private instrument commercial. I'm like, how am I going to be able to fly this jet in 3 weeks, you know? But then I'm also like, well, private instrument commercial is teaching you how to fly a plane in general. Now you're just applying those skills to a bigger airplane. So it shouldn't be much of a difference. So the day finally came, October 28th, 2024. I remember waking up that day so excited to catch my flight to Houston, then to Dallas. The flight to Houston was great, no complaints, and the layover in Houston was about 45 minutes, which was basically enough time to get to disembark, grab food, and head to the next gate. I ended up arriving in Dallas around 9 p.m., being extremely exhausted, but I was happy because the company sent us 2 days before training. Training began on the 30th, so I had a day. You know, I went out to Walmart, went to Walmart, Trader Joe's, and I took a stroll around Dallas. I remember just walking around the area, just trying to take it all in, just like a therapy walk. So, day finally came, and ground classes started at 9 a.m. and went on until 4:35 p.m. for the next 10 days straight. The classes weren't as bad as I thought, and as the days went on, I felt less and less stressed about the type rating. Something I want to talk about was that, say, they had a cafeteria. The food was really good. And the 10 days of ground were really good. Really, really, really good instructors. They were really cool and knowledgeable. Shout out to Dave. He was a great instructor. He was the first instructor I met there. And he just had so much knowledge he poured into us during these few days. And I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. And I also did a lot of studying as I went home. And he had a lot of stories about the airplane. You know, he said he flew it in like 2000 to 2004, which is not long, but the amount of information he had for those 4 years, and still remember it to this day, it was good. So, CAE is a great facility. The only thing about CAE is that what I noticed is that it was a school tailored for pilots who have already flown jets before. So compared to flight safety, I think I was told that flight safety from other guys at the company, they said flight safety actually they kind of hold your hand, because they treated us like your first time flying a plane. So, and the instructors also said, yeah, the school is tailored for people who already have a type rating. So people who don't have a type rating in a jet, it's hard for them to catch up, you know? So I was, this just kind of made me a little bit more stressed. And I remember there were 6 of us in the class. It was It was like a bunch of seasoned pilots. It was this guy who was typed on the Boeing 727, 737, 747, 767, and he was also a check airman for those aircraft. And I'm like, that is insane, you know? There was another guy who flew in the Navy and he flew 737s. All of them flew for like American and Delta and all this stuff. And to me, I came in there with 650 hours, and the most powerful airplane I flew was a Caravan. So I felt like an underdog, and I had something to prove. So after the 10 days of ground training, they had these things called IPTs, and they're integrated procedural trainers. If you look them up there, basically, it's just like there's a bunch of screens that mimic the cockpit before getting in the simulator. Luckily for us, so before that, they use the IPTs to help transition you into the simulator, so you can familiarize yourself with the buttons and start memorizing flows, and basically so you spend less time in the simulator because the simulator is expensive to use. So luckily for us, the IPT for the Embraer 145 was not working, which was good for us because we actually got to sit in the cockpit in the simulator and not actually, we actually got to push real buttons, which made the experience better, I feel. And so it was one of those things where I was like, okay, this works out great, because I felt as though that I'm an underdog and I'm already set back. So anything that can put me forward, I loved it. So I saw it as a benefit. So we had our IPTs in the simulator, but they just didn't turn the motion on, which was fine. I was like, I don't want to, that's fine, it's cool. Once the IPTs were done, I moved on to the simulator sessions. There were 8 simulator sessions, with the 7th being the cross country, in quotes, and the 8th being the check ride. And so sim session went great. We focused on normal maneuvers, procedures, then we went on to sim 2, which was like abnormal emergency procedures, so rejected takeoff, memory items, stalls, steep turns, unusual altitudes. After the sim session, the instructor was not too happy with the progress of my sim partner and me, so they made us retake the sim. The next day, we repeated the sim during the sim session. I brought my A game because I didn't want to repeat the sim anymore. I did all the maneuvers within standards incorrectly. However, on my steep turns, I remember I went out of standards briefly, and then I corrected, and then I redid it again, and I did not go out of standards. The instructor said that since I wasn't able to do it the first time, that I have to retake the sim. And this is the thing about CAE. They grade you on first try, so you have to do things on the very first try, which I don't like, because in the ACS, the Airman Certification Standards, you can go out of standards, but as long as you correct right away and don't consistently break standards, then you're fine. So I thought we would have that same attitude here, but apparently not. So I literally had to retake the sim again. I had to retake the sim just to do the steep turn again. And so in the next sim, my sim partner and I retook the sim. And for the second time, I did all my maneuvers within standards. I almost did them basically perfect. And so I was able to move on. And now I want you guys to notice that I probably said I and not us. I was able to move on. I didn't say us. During this point in the training, my instructor asked me to take a walk with him, and during our mid-session break, we chatted about how he felt as though I should move on without my sim partner, because he felt as though he was holding me back. I told the instructor I did not feel bad for having to leave him behind. However, it's my career, and I want to move on. I don't want to be here for so long. So after that conversation, we had a sim debrief, and the sim instructor told us what was going to happen for the next few days. Then move on to sim 3, which I would just call leg day, and everyone called it leg day because it's just engine out procedures, engine failures for 3 hours straight. This was not as tiring as I thought it would have been. It was engine failure before V1, after V1, engine failure after going miss. Um, the instructor commended me after this sim because he was very happy with my progress after the retake of the previous simulator sessions. And I remember him saying that he said that you're like a new pilot because of issues me and my sim partner had. He wasn't a bad sim partner. It was just, what happened was some situations where like we'll have an emergency situation to deal with, or an abnormal situation, and I'll be flying as a captain, and my sim partner was my first officer, and many times he'd be reading through like a checklist, emergency checklist, and he'd be confused on what to do. And so there'd be times I had to fly the airplane while also having to help him with the emergency checklist. And I remember the instructor was like, "Hey, that's why you have your first officer. Like, you can't be doing two things at once." But he also recognized that I was helping the sim partner because he was not where he was supposed to be, and so it kind of held me back because now I'm trying to fly the plane and do the emergency checklist. And this is a two-pilot aircraft, so I'm not saying throw him on the bus. It's just that is what happened, and we dealt with it as needed. So after leg day was done, we had cold weather operations and hot weather operations. Nothing major during these sessions. They were just to show you how the airplane would fly in certain extreme conditions. And they were like really fun days, So the sim afterwards was recommendation and review. This sim is basically the mock check ride. So I made sure I was all studied up, and I chair flew for hours, and the night before and the days before. I chair flew a lot during this time. I chair flew for hours after sim. After classes, I chair flew a lot. Me and my sim partner, we did so. So I remember walking into the brief before, and I was confident, but I was nervous, as all pilots are with their check rides and mock check rides. And we started up the airplane. We went through the typical pre-flight engine start procedures. Everything checked out. My instructor gave me a normal engine start. I dealt with it, and we took off out of Memphis. Started with steep turns, stalls, unusual altitudes. And once we got done, we went and did some approaches. We did a few precision approaches, non-precision, circling approaches with engine failures happening after going missed. And so afterwards, like the very last thing, I got a total hydraulic failure and a flap failure. And I had to consult the applicable emergency checklist, the QRH, for this. And it wasn't a hard day. It actually made me even more confident for taking the check ride, because the instructor then showed me his paper, which had notes. And it was interesting because I was like, oh my god, he has a lot. What does he have to say, And he actually had like a sentence and a half. And the first sentence was, "Oh, good job on the steep turns." The next sentence was like, "Oh, good job on this." And then there were letters of like good, of like G, or nice job for like nice, N for nice, or something like that. And he literally told me, he said he stopped making notes because there was nothing he needed to correct me on. In other words, what I heard, I did everything within standards. And so the brief lasted like 4 minutes, 3 of which he was just saying I did good and I wanted to do one check ride. And he asked me if I wanted to do another recommendation review, if I wanted to. And I was like, man, I feel good. He said he feels good and confident about me, so I don't think I need to do it necessarily, So the next sim after the mock check ride was the cross-country sim. And it's more so a relaxing sim session because they're conducting a flight from point A to B, going missed at point B and having to go to your alternate. This day I also was scheduled to take my oral exam. So my check ride was split up in 2, which I did not hate. So after I did my cross-country sim, I had like an hour and a half break, and then I went to take the oral exam. So I arrived about 30 minutes early, and the check ride took about an hour and 50 minutes. And the oral exam went pretty well. The examiner said he was happy. He said I came prepared, was knowledgeable of the aircraft, and he filled out my paperwork and shook my hand. And he said good luck on the practical, and then went home. So not much there. And about 4 days later, I was scheduled to take my practical exam. And I did not like this because I was like, I felt as though I was at my peak and I was on a roll. I don't want to be out of sim for 4 days. And if I'm out of sim for 4 days, I might be off my game. So to prevent this, I chair flew for hours from startup to shutdown. I did everything. Chair flew from the maneuvers, approaches, all the way to shutdown. I basically memorized all the checklists, which is not necessary. And then I felt very confident. And it would also help because I was still reading trying on my memory items and things like that, but it helped that I didn't have to prepare for an oral as well. So I just was focusing really on the practical, and I just put all my effort into that. And when the day came, my check ride started at 6:30 in the morning. The examiner and I debriefed on what is expected, and the pilot will write stuff, the usual typical pre-check ride paperwork. We got started with the pre-flight, and the pre-flight, it was a virtual exterior pre-flight because we were in the sim. So he just had like a slideshow of the airplane up, and then I just pointed out things from there. I pointed out like the pitot tube was clogged, the top probe clogged, there's a tape here, something like that. There's a tennis ball like lodged in like the landing gear area, like something like that. Then we got in the sim. I did the interior pre-flight and startup. The examiner gave me an abnormal engine start. I solved it. Then we taxied out the project, did the maneuvers, and the maneuver I disliked the most was steep turns. But throughout my sims, I made sure to keep them. Like I kept practicing them. So after I finished each sim session, and I would finish early because we each had 2 hours to be on a sim. Well, after me and my sim partner split up, I got 3 hours instead. So I would always finish up everything within 2.5 hours, and I spend the next like 30 minutes just make sure my maneuvers aren't set. Especially steep turns. I would practice them a lot. So what happened next? Once we got done with the maneuvers, it was time for the approaches. I did 4 approaches. 2 of them were hand flown from the initial approach fix, and the other 2 were autopilot down to about 200 feet. And after the 2 approaches and going missed upon gear retraction, we then took a break. And my right seat support, who was an instructor, he said I was doing well, keep it up. So that kept me going. And I was happy because at first I felt nervous, but after the 2 approaches and I got through the maneuvers, I just knew I had like 2 more approaches to do, and I would be done. And the examiner didn't say a word the entire time. And when the examiner says nothing, you're doing fine. There's no stress. So people think that examiner has to say good job, nice job. No, he says if he's quiet, you're doing good. So after my break, I went back into the sim, finished up the other 2 approaches. Then I had a flap failure, hydraulic failure. Once we landed, I taxied to the ramp, shut down the aircraft. The examiner said my favorite words: "Congrats, you passed." I was so excited. I could not hold a smile back. I got my certificate. I took a picture in front of the sim, headed home to the hotel, and I took the infamous post-check ride 3-hour nap. And I ordered some semi-decent sushi. Dallas is not known for its sushi, and I should have known that. So that was my experience getting type rated. If anyone has any questions, I know this is a long video, and this is like my first longest video that I have this long. And I wanna start like uploading more and becoming more of like a content creator for aviation. And I just suck with uploading. My last video was 8 months ago. This video should have been up. Realistically, December. I finished in November 26th. I passed my check ride, and I should have had this up from like January at the latest. But I've just been procrastinating. So I'm gonna try, but yeah. So now we're 24 minutes into this video, and we're landing in Nassau, runway 28. Now this is like I think this is like part of my 8th landing in this airplane. I felt a little bit confident now. The landing gear is down. We're on a short approach, so it should be get on flap 22 landing. We can actually go to flap 45, but the runway, this runway is 8,302 feet. So it's actually my first time landing on runway 28 in like my entire life. So it's very interesting. So you see the captain's helping me out. You know, he synced my heading bug, doing our before landing checks. You know, I'm focused on landing. It's a bit gusty out here. I think it was a crosswind from, don't remember. From the left looks like actually. Not much of a crosswind. You know, right here I was going a little too fast, so I think I cut the power a little bit. And right there, touchdown. Center line, right before the 1,000 footers. So not too bad of a landing, considering, I mean, I feel as though I'm much better than before. I think around here I had about 20 hours in this airplane, or even like 15. But now I'm at like over 100 hours, so the landings are much better than before. And I'm gonna have a next video with that soon. Not sure how soon it will be, but you know, right here, just letting it roll down the runway, and yeah, like that's the video. I mean, I don't want to make this too long, but I'm just trying this out for the first time to have a long video, and I also wanted to talk about my experiences, so I have this uploaded. But yeah, we're gonna taxi back to the ramp right now, and yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a long taxi to the ramp. I think this is Papa we're going on. Yeah, we typically take off 10, but you know, this using runway 28, it was off because I've never approached the runway from that side. But again, it's just a runway. And if you guys ever been to Nassau, you might recognize this taxiway. Let's see if I have anything else to say about the 145. Yeah, I've grown to really love this jet. I'm happy that I got this job. I'm happy that I'm flying, you know, because I think from November I didn't start flying until like literally the end of January, which wasn't too long of a time, but considering I haven't flown an airplane since September 7th, as I mentioned. So September 7th to basically end of January. You know, there was times where I was like, I'm bored, I want to fly. But you know, you have to there was exams I had to study for in the Bahamas, to be able to legally fly in the Bahamas. Yeah. So I think I'll let it roll down all the way to the shutdown part. But yeah, favorite things about this jet. So we typically go up to I would say the maximum I've been up to so far would be flight level 20, and that would be going from Nassau to Fort Lauderdale. Even though it's still a short flight, it's still a 30-minute flight. We sometimes take it up there, maybe to avoid an icing layer. Yeah, that's typically the reason why we take it up there. But other than that, we do Nassau to Freeport, and that flight we're at like 16,000 the most, 14,000 sometimes. Nassau to Marshall we just came back from, I think we were probably at like 13,000. No need to go that high, since the flights are so short. And we do a Nassau to Andros. Andros is like, we go up to 8,000, 6,000. North of Luther about 6,000 or 8,000. Depends. As you see British Airways, the 777, just off to my left, and then you see company aircraft right here. And I mean, at this point, you might know which airline this is if you're an aviation aficionado. But then there's Bahamas Air, the ATRs are there. Taxiing into apron 3. I'm just doing the after launch stuff, making sure my page is on the right page, my army was set. I think I was also, I was getting ready for the next flight. I'm not sure where the next flight was to, but I'm sure it was Freeport, because we typically do like Marsh Harbor and Freeport. I think I was on the afternoon shift, so it was a Marsh Harbor and Freeport. So I'm just setting up for Freeport, and I'm probably going to get a clearance But yeah, that was that flight from Marsh Harbor, Abaco to Nassau, and thank you for enjoying. Well, thank you for sticking with me. If you stuck this, if you stayed this long, like and subscribe, or don't. I'm not gonna force you. This is mainly for me. I enjoy doing this. Um, I'm doing the shutdown checklist here. But yeah, thank you guys for joining, and I hope that you enjoyed this video.